Nothing in a finite world can grow forever. Take our bodies. Each of our bodies has, on average, about 100 trillion cells. But if 1 out of 100 trillion, that is insignificant. One cell out of 100 trillion says, I'm going to divide forever. I'm not going to stop. I live in a big body. You know very well. Long before that cell has created a very significant mass, if you don't get rid of it, it'll kill you. Cancer attempts to grow forever, and the result is death. Now, I'm going to show you why this constant demand for growth is suicidal. Anything growing steadily over time, whether it's the size of your city, the amount of garbage you make, the amount of water you use, the number of people, anything growing steadily over time is called exponential growth. And anything growing exponentially has a predictable doubling time. I'm going to give you a system analogous to the planet. I'm going to give you a test tube full of food for bacteria. That's the Earth. And I'm going to put one bacterial cell in it, and that's us. And that bacterial cell is going to go into exponential growth. It's going to divide every minute. Okay? So at time 0, there's one cell in the test tube. In 1 minute, there are 2. 2 minutes, there are 4. 3 minutes, there are 8. 4 minutes, 16. That's exponential growth. And at 60 minutes, the test tube is completely packed with bacteria, and there's no food left. Okay? It's a 60-minute growth cycle. When is the test tube only half full? And of course the answer is at 59 minutes. 59 minutes, it's only half full, and 1 minute later, it's completely full, right? So at 58 minutes, it's 25% full. 57 minutes, it's 12.5% full. At 55 minutes of a 60-minute cycle, it's 3% full. So if at 55 minutes, one of the bacteria says, hey guys, I've been thinking, we got a population problem. The other bacteria would say, Jack, what the hell have you been smoking, man? 97% of the test tube's empty, and we've been around for 55 minutes. They'd be 5 minutes away from filling it, so bacteria are no smarter than people. 59 minutes, they go, oh my God, Jack was right. We got 1 minute left. What the hell are we going to do now? Don't give any money to those economists. Give it to those scientists. And by God, in less than a minute, those scientists invent 3 more test tubes full of food for bacteria. They quadruple the amount of food in space. That would be like us discovering 3 planet Earths right nearby we could start using immediately. So they're saved, right? So what happens? At 60 minutes, the first test tube's full. 61 minutes, the second's full. 62 minutes, all 4 are full. By quadrupling the amount of food in space, you buy 2 extra minutes. How can we add even a fraction of 1% more of air, water, soil, biodiversity to the planet? We can't. It's fixed. It's the biosphere. You can't grow it. And every scientist I've talked to agrees with me. We're already past the 59th minute. So all of this discussion about more is we've got to accelerate what is a suicidal path. Do you guys need more? Are you so bad off in Perth you've got to have more? I mean, how much more do we need? Why are all these politicians saying we've got to have more when it's taking us on a suicidal path? When I say this in front of politicians and business people, they get very, very angry at me. How dare you say we're past the 59th minute? Look at our stores, they're filled with stuff. Look at our people, we're living longer, we're healthier. How dare you say that? I say it without apology. We have created the illusion that everything is all right by using up the rightful legacy of our children and our grandchildren. You don't have to believe me. Ask anyone who's lived in Perth over the last 80 or 90 years. Ask them, what was it like here when you were a kid? Oh yeah, there are a lot of cars and fridges and televisions and all those things, but ask them, what was it like in the surrounding area? I've been to the Amazon, to the heart of the Amazon, to the Serengeti, to the Arctic. And when I go to these places, I try to find the oldest person in the village to say, what was it like when you were 5 or 6 years old? And everywhere, including in the middle of the Amazon, the answer is terrifyingly similar. It used to be so different. There used to be trees as far as you could see. The air used to be black with birds at certain times of the year. The rivers used to be jammed with fish. All over the world, our elders are a living record of enormous changes that have happened in the span of a single human life. Americans are always saying, well, there's plenty more where that came from. There isn't plenty more where that came from. For hundreds of thousands of years, the earth has been fully occupied and fully developed by 30 million species. If we drive plants or animals out of the places that we live, there isn't empty space where they can go and inhabit somewhere else. If they're not here, they're not anywhere. Well, Americans say that's the price of progress. I don't think it's progress to use up the rightful legacy of our children and grandchildren. That is a weird definition of progress, if you ask me. We know in our guts that something is wrong, even though the media will try to hide it from you. You know, I landed in Australia and every big headlines, Australian dollar reaches parity with the American dollar. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that fantastic? Your dollar is so strong. Meanwhile, on the same week, there was a report that 20% of all plant species could be extinct by the middle of this century. In our papers in Canada, buried on page 18 in a 6-inch column. What the hell is going on? You know, anything to do with the economy, banner headlines. Anything to do with the state of the planet that keeps us alive, buried somewhere, and a one-day wonder in the newspapers. We know something's wrong. Oceans cover 70% of the planet. They're a mess. We've used them as a garbage can. There are islands of plastic in the Pacific Ocean bigger than the state of Texas. There are dead zones where nothing lives, growing in size, duration, and number in every ocean on Earth. We know that if we continue fishing and polluting as we are now, that by 2050 there will not be a single commercial species of fish left on the planet. And now, with increased levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the carbon dioxide's dissolving in the oceans as carbonic acid, acidifying the oceans with consequences ecologists tell us are terrifying. 80% of the forests on the land have been fragmented and destroyed. If we continue at the rate we're going today, in 20 years, there will not be a single large intact forest left on the planet. We've used air, water, and soil to dump our toxic chemicals, and I know what a wonderful place Perth is, but every one of you is filled with dozens of toxic chemicals and over a pound of plastic dissolved in your bodies. And we know that climate is changing and that burning fossil fuels is at the heart of it. So here we are. As a species, we've shown ourselves to be incredibly inventive and clever. But we've lacked the humility to realize there are limits and that we don't know enough to manage the biosphere. So I think that this moment we have to ask, what the heck is life all about? My great hero and teacher, my mentor, was my father. And in 1994, when he was 85, he was dying of cancer. I moved in to live with him the last month of his life. He was fully prepared to die. He was not afraid of it. And we had, I think, the happiest time of my life was that last month. We laughed and cried and pored over scrapbooks and talked and talked and talked. Every night my wife would come with my children and slides of pictures of trips that we'd taken together with my dad. And he kept saying over and over, David, I die a rich man. My father was never a wealthy person. But he kept saying, I will die a rich man. In all that month that I lived with him, he never once said, gee, do you remember that closet full of fancy clothes I had? You remember that car I bought in 1987? Or the big house that we owned on Broughdale Lane? All we talked about were family, friends, and neighbors, and the things that we did together. That was my father's wealth. And in those things, he was truly a wealthy man. We've got often some weird idea about what life is all about. Somehow we've got ourselves into thinking that we need more and more, bigger and better, more recent, more modern, and that's going to make us happy. And yet we know in our hearts that's not true. So what then at this moment is the challenge? First of all, slow down. What the hell is the rush? We're all going to die anyway. We're just rushing to drop off the end. Slow down. Get to know each other. Think about our children and grandchildren and ask what we're going to leave them. And then get on with the most important part. We have to reimagine the future. Our great ability was imagination, which enabled us to dream of the world yet to come, to dream of something we could try to achieve. And once we have that dream, we can work to achieve it. That's what we've done since the beginning of our species. Imagine a world where we live, work, and play in the same area. So we don't need a car. We want to go outside because that's where all the fun and the action is. Imagine where the streets and houses and roads all have the ability to trap every bit of sunlight falling on it to convert it into electricity. Imagine every roof capturing water and growing food. Imagine our cities filled with orchards of fruit and nut trees and community gardens so we can celebrate the seasons through the various plants that mature over the year. Imagine extracting heat from the earth in the winter and putting heat back down into the earth in the summer. Imagine cancer and asthma rates plummeting because we no longer put toxics into our surroundings. Imagine zero production of waste because we design industrial systems like nature, where one species' waste is another species' opportunity. Imagine, as I did when I was a kid, drinking the water out of any river or lake. In Canada, when you catch a fish, you now have to consult a big book to find out what chemicals are in it and how much you can eat each week. Imagine catching a fish and eating it without worrying about what's in it. Imagine in Australia with rich forests that can be logged forever because we're logging them the right way. Imagine lighter than airships that transport massive payloads at very little emission. Imagine taking tourists on wonderful trips across the earth at a speed that makes Earth sense. Imagine an economy that is in balance with nature's productive capacity, that incorporates nature's services into it. I could go on and on. I've only hinted at some of the possibilities, but these are not pie in the sky dreaming of stuff like carbon capture and storage. These are all actually things that are going on in different ways in different parts of the world. These can be done. They are being done. So let us dream of what is possible so that we can come together and put our efforts into working towards that dream. And then let us show what we are truly capable of as a species. Thank you.